welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
This is Jessica with Syosset Libraries Turn the Page podcast. My librarian co-host is...
This is Evelyn, Reader Services Librarian at Syosset Public Library.
And we are welcoming back one of our favorite wild authors. It's summertime, so it's time for a new Samantha Downing book. Welcome back, Samantha.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me back.
I think we would be completely unwise not to have you back. So your last two books were My Lovely Wife and He Started It. And tell us about this one.
This one is called For Your Own Good, and it's about a teacher at a private school, a prestigious private school in the Northeast, who has just been named Teacher of the Year. And it's about time, let me just say, and from his point of view, it's about time that he was made Teacher of the Year. And he knows his job. He knows what the students need to learn, and he knows what he needs to teach them. If everybody else would just get out of his way, that would be great. All the other teachers, the parents, if everybody would stop getting in his business, life would be perfect.
What a weird guy. I think the minute you meet Teddy, who is the teacher in question, that's the first thing that popped into my mind.
Yeah, I found him very creepy, which I think is good for a thriller. You want your characters to have a little bit of that in them, because you don't know which way they're going and what they're really going to be doing. And he's creepy, all right. He's perfect for this. So all these twists, and I mean, we can't give away any spoilers, so we have to go around all that. So what made you pick the setting this time of a private school?
I was thinking the last two books really dealt with families, and the first one, My Lovely Wife, sort of the nuclear family, and the second one was siblings. So I wanted to pick something else that the people are familiar with, that people can relate to, in terms of everybody goes to high school. And even if it's not a private high school, it doesn't matter. Everybody has a high school experience, and everybody can relate to having teachers that they either liked or didn't like. But I started thinking that teachers, they really spend so much time with kids. And in general, people are usually looking for teachers that are predators. So when you're looking for a problem teacher, they focus on predators, and correctly so. Teddy is a sociopath, and someone like that could easily slip through the cracks and not be found until it's too late, not be discovered that they're that off until they actually do something. So they're sociopaths or psychopaths, they can fool people. So the idea that a teacher like that could exist, someone that is that disturbed, was terrifying to me. So, and spending, again, so much time and having so much influence on kids, and how that plays out in the book. The story is told from multiple points of view, including one of the students who has the most interaction with Teddy, and how Teddy ends up influencing him is definitely part of the story.
Did this have anything to do with your high school career?
No, not at all. I didn't go to a private high school. It wasn't anything related to that at all. It was just the experience of high school and the idea of that you really don't know who's teaching your kids. I mean, you hope it's not a predator, but beyond that, there's a lot of other disturbing things people can be beyond predators.
I felt very much like in this book, there's something, I know a lot of teachers, and there's something that's kind of come up, when you're on the other end of high school and people who teach, and you sort of hear things and you start to feel like sometimes the teachers are just as immature as the kids. And it's impossible, I think, for people, because we are still people, to kind of put away their petty differences. Or, you know, everybody's a little competitive, everybody wants to shine in their way, and everybody still gets sucked into drama. And I think there's a bit of that in this book, even though I think Teddy is certainly more of the linchpin than other faculty members.
Yeah, I have I have a writers group here in New Orleans, and one of the writers who's in it used to be a teacher. And so she was telling me stories of her teaching experiences, and some of the stuff is so petty, like I couldn't even put it in the book. It wasn't even believable. So, and how teachers, like it's a big thing when they're there for 10 years and they get a pin and they wear the pin every day so that people know they had been there for 10 years. And it seems so petty for adults to be acting like that. So I have a little bit of that in the book. There's definitely a sort of a class difference between the teachers on who went to the school and who didn't. And there's a big division in that. So entitlement is really big in the book. And Teddy is not a wealthy or entitled person. So he has a huge problem with it. And I wanted the kids, because kids who are in that scenario of when you're raised rich, unless your parents go out of their way to teach you, you don't realize you're that rich. I mean, you don't have anything to compare it to.
Right.
So Zach is the main student in the book, and he is very self-aware. He knows exactly what he gets away with, and he knows why he gets away with it. So he knows that he has advantages, and which is not trying to bring sympathy to these kids, because they don't need it, but they have a whole different set of problems from people who are not rich and entitled.
Yeah, there's a lot with the parents too. Like the parents aren't exactly 100% mature either. You know, and I think like, so let's just kind of like talk about the title, For Your Own Good.
But yeah, I was trying to come up with that something that Teddy would say, I'm doing this for you. So it was kind of like I was playing around with in your best interest, or for your own good was just a stronger phrase. I'm doing all of this for your own good. And he truly believes this. He truly believes what he is doing is what's best for these kids. And this is what the kids need.
It makes me think a little bit, because we recently interviewed Caroline Kepnes about her latest You book, and just about how, like Joe, for instance, who I think is much more of an exhibitionist sociopath than Teddy, although he also is able to fly under the radar, really truly believes that he is like a gift to these women who don't realize that they love him yet, but will. But anything that happens is always somebody else's fault. And I kind of got that from Teddy too. It's always somebody else's fault. If something goes wrong, you know, you find out very early on that he's married, but you're not exactly sure what happened with his wife, Allison, because she's not physically present with him when you first meet him. You just know that she existed at one point, or exists rather, elsewhere. And the more you hear about just like himself and being in the school, and you know, the fact that he's this great guy who broke into this elite school where only former students teach, but anything that's a problem, it's never Teddy's fault, ever.
No. And I think that's the key to writing a character like that. It's a character that's so off, whether a psychopath or sociopath or whatever the ill or narcissist or anything like that is, they have to completely believe. In order to make the reader believe, the reader doesn't have to agree with them, but the reader has to believe that they believe. So that character 100% lives in his own reality and believes it 100%. whatever it is. And that's how you can get, in my opinion, a reader on board with that. You can't have them waffling. You can't have them being half psychopath and half not psychopath. They're in their zone and you're just along for the ride, even though you can see all the problems with their zone. you're just there because it's fun to read, or it's a good story, or whatever.
Are any of these characters based on people you know?
I definitely have known kids like Zach in my life. Maybe not rich like that, but certainly that kid in high school who's just the one everybody, he's the kid, you want to hate him, but he's so nice, so you like him, and he's that kid. The teachers, not necessarily the teachers. Definitely I've known parents like some of those parents and how pushy they are.
Oh,
and
yes.
the relentless push towards getting into a good school and things like that. So I'd say Zach probably is the most specific one. It was also, for me, a little vicarious to live through this because I wasn't like a popular kid in high school. I was just a nobody. So to be able to be like, this must be what it's like to be popular. I'll write that. Because Zach is popular. And so it's fun to see someone who to try to write someone who's that confident when they're in high school, because most of the time they're not.
Well,
Have you been back to a high school reunion yet where you could say, I am a USA Today best-selling author?
No.
that's the Romy and Michelle fantasy, isn't it? Like you come in and you're in your gown and everybody else is like, what's up? And you're just like, well, have you seen what I'm doing now? And everyone's like, cool.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, and I think like just to kind of get back to the parents, you were saying that they were pushy, but also like parents who go so far as to sort of meddle in their kids' school to the point that they will be like, yeah, my kid could have gotten a better grade, give him more work. And the kid is like, well, this stinks. I could have gotten a better grade, but now you're going to make it worse for me because this teacher is going to think I put you up to this.
Mm-hmm. And that's very common, very, very common, of parents getting in there and trying to get grades changed and trying to, in their minds, help their kid to get a better grade, to get into a better college. And they're probably not really helping because mom and dad aren't always going to be able to fix your problems. But they do it. And there's a lot of pressure on, especially in a private school, when they're the donors of the school and your donor is saying, change the grade. So I can imagine that would be even worse in private school. In public schools, what can they do? But they get mad. So I wouldn't want to be a teacher and have to deal with the parents. It's one thing to have a kid ask you to change the grade, but to have their parents come in and do it, that would be terrible.
Okay, what's with the milk? Teddy has this really creepy habit of, when he thinks he's been a good boy, he, treats himself with a nice cold glass of milk. Where did that come from?
I like to try to do things that are unexpected. I mean, I had several people read this and say they assumed he was going to sit down with a glass of scotch, but that's the assumption. So I had to make it something different. And milk is just such a weird thing. So few adults would sit down and have a glass of milk like ever. And so to have that be his treat is it's his thing. And there's a thing in the book, and I won't go into any detail because I don't want to reveal it, with coffee and coffee pods. And I thought that would creep people out. I didn't realize the milk was going to freak people out. It's like everybody mentions the milk. So.
And you're right. It should be the coffee pods because almost everybody, right?
Yeah.
The milk totally overshadows the coffee pods. So I didn't mean for it to do that. I just thought it would be a weird quirk that he has. And then it kind of blew up. And that seems to be the things people remember. Somebody even just sent me an email. My publicist sent me an email saying I can't look at milk the same way.
it's so sanitized and 1950s and indicative of just like this whole whitewashed culture. And maybe I'm reading too much into it, but that's what
That's good.
it felt like to me while I was reading it. You know, like an old 1950s commercial of a guy delivering milk and some poor woman who's not allowed to leave the house. It had that weird, like a very unsettling feel to it.
Yeah, I'm glad it worked. It definitely seemed to creep people out, and people go, ew, gross, because who drinks a glass of milk? So there you go.
Yeah.
I never knew it was so creepy. I just thought it was weird, but there you go.
You drink milk?
No.
I know.
No, I just,
Samantha's like, I just write creepy characters that drink milk. I wouldn't do that.
I wouldn't do that. No, but to do something that I like to take something mundane and then just twist it into something else. So someone sitting down at the end of the day, or someone celebrating with a drink of something, is very common. What they drink is where it became different. I mean, it's some people, it may not be alcohol, it may be a expensive coffee or something. I mean, it could be anything, but it's typically not milk, I'm gonna guess.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess the milk industry is not going to be promoting your book, huh?
Evelyn, did you have any other any?
I
because
just
I
want
feel
to
like
know
I've been talking too much.
How was writing the book during the pandemic for you?
Actually, I finished this I turned this in right before the pandemic started. So
Okay.
I had been writing throughout the fall into the fall of 2019, and then I turned it in like the middle of March. So just as we were shutting down, it was turned in. In fact, there is a mention of COVID in the book that we had changed in editing, and we had put the word COVID in. The original word was Ebola.
Oh.
So it was a thing, and someone was saying there's no Ebola breakout. So we changed it to there's no COVID breakout or something. And
that was very funny. I hadn't thought about it until you just reminded me. At one point, somebody says it's not the Rona. And it occurred to me that this is the first post-corona book that I've actually read.
Right. And I didn't want to go into the whole COVID thing, just an acknowledgement that it existed and that we were now in the future, like we were beyond it and we were no longer having an outbreak.
which is a nice future we all look forward to.
Absolutely. Everything okay down in New Orleans?
Yeah, doing well, and the people are definitely coming back, and we've had the city has done really well with vaccinations. I don't think the state of Louisiana is doing as well, because the South in general isn't, but the city has done really well with the vaccinations. I've had mine for months. So but yeah, there's definitely, I started meeting with my writers group in person again, now that we're all vaccinated. And so it's getting definitely more normal.
That's great. You guys meet at a coffee shop?
Yeah, we do. And nobody wears masks anymore except inside stores. But I mean, like outdoors, walking around the French Quarter, nobody wears a mask anymore. And the mandate is gone except for the indoor spaces.
It's better than us.
Yeah, right. Our mandates are gone.
Gone completely. You don't have to wear it. Hospitals, schools, only those types of places. Everywhere else you can be. In our library, you can be totally unmasked. So
yes. So question, last we spoke, which was about a year ago, My Lovely Wife was optioned for an adaptation. Has there been any movement in that?
I haven't heard any yet, still waiting. I don't know where they are with it, but hopefully I still have my fingers crossed.
Because we're looking forward to that. I can't wait to see who is cast as Millicent.
I know, me too. I can't wait.
Do you have that? So in your mind, because we played this last time and it was fun. So if we were casting for your own good, who would you consider to be Teddy?
Teddy, he's supposed to be about 40 years old. So if I go with that age group, I kind of see a little bit of a nerdy professor type. I see like Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Oh,
I could
he's
see him
good.
doing it. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
really good. I mean, it could be somebody older too. He doesn't have to be 40, but there's a lot of characters that could play. There's a lot of actors that could play sort of a crazy. And I think Joseph Gordon-Levitt is a great actor. I think he could play that balance of like someone you think is just a nobody teacher, but he's actually crazy on the inside. You know, he's a sociopath or whatever. So I think someone like that would be great. And then the kids, there is a character in the book called Fallon, who is a former student. I totally and completely see her 100% as the girl from Queen's Gambit.
Oh, Anya
Taylor. The
yeah.
way she has that look on her face, she looks like she could kill somebody. She has a look that could kill. And Fallon is a angry person. So I every time I visualize Fallon, I see that girl.
Fallon was very interesting. She's a character, and this is something that I love about when you write your characters. You're very good at writing these characters where you think you know what's going on, but there's always something else. And she is very angry, and I think rightfully so in many ways. But she's like really just a very full character, and I really enjoyed spending time with her.
Yeah, that was interesting. This is the first book I've had come out that has the multiple points of view. And it was interesting to see the story, even from me to write it from different points of view and how they would see it, because all of my books really have a focus on the effect that your actions have on other people. So in My Lovely Wife, you really see the effect on the kids and on the town that this couple killing people, like how it affects them. So when you have multiple points of view, you really can see how other people are affected by your actions. And all of my books, actually, this is apparently a theme in my book that I didn't realize was a theme in my book. All of my books have some focus on how adults affect kids, whether it was in My Lovely Wife, whether it was in The Siblings, in He Started It. And now in this book, it's even more direct. And this is the first book where I actually have the kids' point of view, where you have Zach's point of view in it, but they're all about the things adults do and how kids are affected by it.
Yeah, that's true. I guess because in He Started It, you had them from a flashback point of view, but it wasn't
how the parents and grandpa,
grandpa, that guy.
How long does it take you usually to write a book?
About 6 months.
Wow, you're good. You're quick.
Well, to have one come out every year, it has to. There's not much more time than 6 months, because then it has to go through the editing process.
So what are you working on now?
Book 4 for next summer.
Book 4, Teddy's Revenge.
Oh, no sequel. Okay. No sequel.
No sequels. That's okay. I don't think we need to spend any more time with Teddy and his creepiness. I think this was the perfect size of a glass of milk that we could spend with Teddy.
Yeah, there's no sequel planned for any of the books.
That's appropriately so. So what are you reading now, or do you not get a chance to really read?
I have been reading. I did read Carolyn Kepney's latest book. I love her books. I think she's great. Actually, the Hannah Mary McKinnon's new book is just out today, and I love her books. Her book is called You Will Remember Me, and it is her books are crazy dark. Like you don't realize how dark they are until you get into it, and I love that book.
I think Evelyn and I are both writing that down right now.
Yeah, you
What's
can
her
pick
name?
out any, or the one from last year was called Sister Dear, but today the one out today is called You Will Remember Me,
And her name?
and they're just great thrillers. They just really are. I read Hank Felipe Ryan has a new one coming out in September called Her Perfect Life, which is really good, and I read that. So yeah, I read as much as possible. It's typically always in this genre. I don't have too much time to read outside the genre.
That's funny because a lot of authors we've spoken to, if they don't usually read, especially thriller authors, they don't like to read in their genre when they're writing their books.
It's hard when you're writing in the book. I separate it definitely by time. I write in the morning and I only read at night.
Mhm.
So it's a total separation of when I'm doing what. And
Okay.
but it can be hard to read any kind of fiction really when you're writing, because you don't want you don't want their style getting into your head. So, or their writing style even.
Did you have to do a lot of research on private schools and private school culture for this book?
Some I just made up. The Belmont Academy, I have a fascination, being from California, I have a fascination with that Northeast way that it's the kind of thing I only see in the movies and hear about, and it's an old world type thing that doesn't exist in California, of those old schools and their legacy students and the boarding type schools, and it's just a whole different way of life. So it's sort of one of those cobbled together things from knowledge or things I've seen or things I've read.
Very cool.
So we're to expect that we'll be able to speak to you next year around this time also with the fourth book, right?
Yeah, sure. It's supposed to come out next summer. So yeah, definitely.
Good for you. Wow. You just keep pumping them out. That's amazing.
I try to anyway.
Do you get a break at all? Do you get any time off?
No, not when there's one a year, not really. I'm always either writing or in the editing process or trying to come up with an idea for the next one. There's maybe like a month break in between. In between the time the editing is done on one and when I really need to get started on the next.
Do you think you'll continue with multiple points of view, or are you going to, do you think you'll go back to the single narrator?
The fourth book I'm working on has multiple points of view, but I have an idea for the fifth book that's going to go back to the single. So we'll see if that idea actually plays out. I don't know.
I love that you're already
For me, it just depends on what story you're telling. So there are stories where it's better from one point of view, in my opinion, to keep someone in that one zone the whole time.
Did you read, oh man, what's the name of that book? The Girls Are All So Nice Here?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
That book gutted me.
That was
book
great.
Gutted me. I was curious. That was one that after I read it, I was curious if you read it as well.
Yes, Lori Elizabeth Flynn. Yeah, that was a great book. Yeah.
For those people who haven't listened to our other interview with Samantha, what did you do before you became a thrill writer?
Oh, I worked at an investment company. It mainly focused on manufacturing, and it was like a office job. So had nothing to do with writing whatsoever.
So what made you decide?
Now I'm a full-time writer. So
what made you decide to start writing?
Well, I actually have always been a writer. I've been writing for like 20 years, and but I did it as a hobby. I never really thought of it as a way to make money. That prospects never looked so good for that, and it seemed very difficult to get published. And I was kind of published on a fluke. Someone in my writers group sent my lovely wife in to a friend of a friend, and it got to an agent in New York, and who referred me to another agent, and she sold the book in 2 days. So it all sort of just snowballed from that one thing. And then I had a career. So like within a month, like everything changed.
I'm so
And
glad
I didn't,
that happened.
My Lovely Wife came out in March of 2019, and I stayed at my job until the end of that year. Right at the end of 2019, I left the job, and then like 2 months later, we were in the pandemic, and
Mhm.
so there it was. So I've really had a year of working from home, but apparently I would have been working from home anyway. So,
Right. Spoken to authors, and a lot of their lives have not changed that much because they do. It's a very solitary job anyway.
yeah, definitely.
Are you going on tour or virtual tour?
I think I'll have a few events. I don't know how many. I don't know how many. There'll be a few. I think people are tired of the virtual, especially because it's going to be in July. So we'll see how many people are really paying attention in July, but it'll be virtual. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. This was awesome. Come back next year and we
Definitely.
can talk about how scary and creepy your characters are for your next book.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me.
And this was Jessica with Syosset Libraries Turn the Page podcast. My librarian co-host was
Evelyn.
And our guest was
Samantha Downing.
And we are going to close this chapter of Turn the Page.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.